Welcome to the Zoom Bible study. Thank you for taking the time to be a part of it. The Lenten season is a time for reflection, making positive changes in our life, and renewing our spiritual connection with God. The Lenten season also prepares us for Easter. However, there's no Easter without the cross. So to help us in our Lenten journey, this year's study will focus on Jesus' final week in Jerusalem. What happened in that final week of Jesus' life that led to the crucifixion and ultimately the resurrection? And what Lenten lessons can we learn from a study of those events? As Amy Jill Levine has written, reliving the final days of Jesus during the season of Lent, we have the opportunity to think about our life alongside the life of Jesus, inviting inward transformation and then outward action. End of quote. Due to the brevity of this study, and that some of the days will be covered in upcoming Holy Week worship services, in this study, we'll primarily be looking at the events of Monday through Thursday. Last week, we looked at Monday's event, which was Jesus cleansing the temple. That lesson and other past Bible studies can be found on the church's YouTube channel, SOTC Huntsville. Again, that's SOTC Huntsville, one word. Now on to Tuesday. Jesus and his disciples returned to the temple from Bethany. Bethany was a little town about 2 miles east of Jerusalem. And most likely throughout that last week, Jesus and his entourage stayed in Bethany at the home of Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. Now, everything that happened on that Tuesday, the Tuesday of Holy Week, it all happened at the temple. It was a day of debate and confrontations between Jesus and various Jewish groups. Now, a lot of ink is used to tell us about that Tuesday. In the Gospel of Mark, 115 verses are devoted to Tuesday. For comparison, the day that takes up the second amount of ink is Thursday with its mere 60 verses. So a lot of ink for Tuesday. So here's what happened. And all of these references are from the Gospel of Mark. Starts off that when the chief priests, scribes, and elders challenge Jesus's authority. Then Jesus tells the parable of the wicked talents. Now, that one ends almost comically when the temple authorities realize that Jesus was throwing shade at them. And then, in an effort to trap Jesus, the Herodians and the Pharisees asked Jesus a loaded question about paying taxes to Caesar. Now, we'll circle back to that one. That will be our main lesson tonight. But the day continues. The Sadducees, which didn't believe in resurrection, asked Jesus a hypothetical question about, and wait for it, the resurrection. Then a scribe asked Jesus which commandment is the greatest. And we'll briefly circle back to that one too tonight. I guess turnabout is fair play, so the next thing that happens is that Jesus asked a riddle about the Messiah that no one can answer. And it's not done yet. Then Jesus indicts the scribes who devour widows' houses. They're taking advantage of those most desperate. Then Jesus turns around and compliments a poor widow who gave 2 copper coins. She gave all that she had, and he contrasts her generosity with those 2 small copper coins to the actions of the wealthy. It does not go well for the wealthy. And then to top it all off, Jesus predicts the temple's destruction. Then Jesus and the disciples leave and they head back to Bethany. And while they're on that journey, they take a little rest, a little break on the Mount of Olives. And so they're looking down on the temple now. And Peter, James, John, and Andrew take Jesus to the side privately and ask, in follow up to his prediction about the temple's destruction, they asked, when will this be, and what will be the sign that all these things are about to be accomplished? And in reply, Jesus gives a lengthy answer that's known as the little apocalypse, which most scholars believe are Jesus's predictions about what the signs or the situations would be right before the temple would be destroyed. And we know that the temple was destroyed in AD 70, about 4 decades after Jesus walked this earth. And the situation that he describes in the little apocalypse pretty much happened the way that he had predicted it. Now, as you can see, Tuesday was a lot. There's no physical drama or street theater like we had on Sunday and Monday of Holy Week, but there's plenty of verbal drama. Now, there's no way to cover everything, so I'm going to circle back to 2 passages which I think fit well in this Lenten season. First, let's go back to this fascinating exchange between Jesus and the Pharisees and the Herodians. Then they, and they are chief priests, scribes, and elders, they sent to Jesus some Pharisees and some Herodians to trap him in what he said. The 2 groups approached Jesus and said, "Teacher, we know you are truthful and unconcerned about the opinion of others. It is evident you aren't swayed by another's rank, but to teach God's way of life sincerely." Aren't they just putting it all, they're just being thick with their flattery. And then they get around to asking the question, so is it lawful to pay tax to Caesar or not? Are we to pay or not to pay? Knowing their hypocrisy, he said to them, "Why are you trying to trick me? Bring me a denarius and let me see it." When they handed him one, he said to them, "Whose image and inscription do you see?" "Caesar's," they answered. Then Jesus said, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to God what is God's." This reply took them completely by surprise. Now, ever since Rome had conquered Judea in 63 BCE, Rome required a large tribute from the Jewish people. The tribute not only enriched Rome, but it also helped pay for the Roman army that occupied Judea. So in essence, Rome was making the Jewish people pay for their own oppression. So get the feel that this is not a popular thing. And so the question, is it lawful to pay tax to Caesar or not, is simply a trap question, because if Jesus answers no, it would be seen as encouragement to reject Roman rule, which meant that Rome would have arrested him on the spot. But if he answers yes, he would lose favor with the Jewish pilgrims, for Jesus would then be seen as siding with Rome. And if the temple authorities could get the crowd to turn on Jesus, then they would quickly have the green light to arrest him. So it was a no-win situation for Jesus. But no one knows how to flip the situation like Jesus. And how he answers is genius. In typical Jesus fashion, he answers a question with a question. He says, bring me a coin, show it to me. And they went for it. They bid. And when they handed him a denarius, he asked, whose image and inscription is this? Caesar's, they replied. And as soon as they had brought the coin out, and as soon as they said Caesar, Jesus had exposed their hypocrisy. Now, let me explain that. In Judea, there were two types of coins. This is generally speaking. Because of the Jewish prohibition of graven images, Rome allowed the Jews to have their own currency. So the Jewish currency had numbers and images of wheat and olive trees and things of nature on them, no human images. The second type of coin was Roman, and the Roman money had the image of Caesar on it, and it described him as divine and the Son of God. And let me show you what they handed Jesus. This is the coin they gave to him. These Roman coins were minted during the reign of Roman Emperor Tiberius. He served from 14 to 37 CE, so that's the emperor that Jesus lived under. The head side bears Tiberius's image along with the inscription that translate Caesar Augustus Tiberius, son of the divine Augustus. And then the tail side adds his title as Pontifex Maximus, which translates Rome's highest priest. And that inscription surrounds the image of Tiberius's mother, Lydia, and Lydia is depicted as the goddess of peace. So that's what they gave Jesus. Now, when they produced the Roman coin, Jesus had exposed them. How could the Pharisees be a kingdom of priests, a holy nation, keepers of the Torah, and so forth and so on, while they were also carrying coinage with the emperor's image on it that proclaimed the emperor's divinity, and they were holding these coins on temple grounds to boot? Coins were propaganda items for Rome. And here are the Pharisees carrying Roman propaganda. After exposing them, Jesus utters his famous line, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God. Now, Jesus' statement is often misinterpreted as a tax issue. It wasn't. Or as some type of endorsement of separate political and religious spheres, separation of church and state. The key to this passage is when Jesus says, and give to God what is God's. Exodus 9:29 and Psalm 24:1 state that the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. Everything on earth belongs to God. And as humans made in God's image, we are created for God's purposes. The takeaway from Jesus' teaching in this passage is that God has the highest claim on us. And all other claims on our lives must be subservient, including the demands of the empire. This does not mean that we should withdraw from society or disengage from our civic duties. Instead, what it is teaching us is that we are called to live in a way that reflects God's image and values in every aspect of our lives, including all of our interactions, our work, our finances, our talents, our skills, everything about our life, including how we vote. The image on something shows who it belongs to. Jesus saying, give Caesar his coin. But remember that we bear God's image. And Jesus calls us to live accordingly. So at this midway point in the season of Lent, as we continue to reflect on reconnection with God, maybe we can ask ourselves what actions best show that connection. And in this hyper-political world, do we identify more with a political party or a political figure than we do with Christ and the kingdom? If so, the Lenten season is a great time to start reflecting our love and our loyalty, first and foremost, to Christ. After all, it was also on the Tuesday of Holy Week that Jesus was asked what was the greatest commandment. And Jesus' response was, the first is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You must love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your mind, and with all of your strength. And the second is this, you must love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. If we can fulfill and live out the great commandment, then we will be showing our love and loyalty to God and God's kingdom. Next Wednesday, we'll take a look at the Wednesday of Holy Week, a week that changed everything. Until then, God's abundant grace and peace to you.